So what we're going to talk about today is really what we've been doing at the ministry. I joined in December, so that's almost 6 months. I think we've achieved a lot over the first 6 months since I've been there. Really where we're focusing our efforts within technology and digital services is focusing our thoughts around what technology, what strategies do we need to really help support the New Zealand health strategy that was released last year. So if many of you should know the health strategy, if you haven't looked at it, take a look. It's a fantastic piece of work. It's I call it an ambitious piece of work, because I think if you look at some of the health strategies that you see globally, I think the New Zealand proposition is actually amazing. You know, it's distilled down into very simple concepts, but all around the premise that New Zealanders live well, stay well, get well. So Darren's going to talk later about some of the thinking that we've been doing around how technology can really help drive the New Zealand health strategy. A couple of points around New Zealand. It's quite, obviously it's a very interesting country, not only because of the size, that makes it very interesting. We think it's easy to implement digital strategies. Actually, it's quite complex because of the way that the system is set up. But it's important to understand some of the demographic changes that we're seeing as a country that will really impact our thinking of what the health system will need to support. So we know that it's a growing population, so it's actually going quite a fast rate. So in 2006, the population grew by 97,000, or by 2% to 4.6 million. And that's a lot of growth. The other consideration is also in 2016, the percent of population of 65 plus has increased to 15%. So it's an aging population. So we're seeing an increase in population, but there's also a shift to the age demographic as well. We're also seeing huge shifts in terms of demographics in certain regions. So Nelson, Marlborough, Tasman, the median age is above 40, whereas the median age is 37. So we also need to understand what particular demographics and how different towns, what the demographic looks like, to make sure that we put in the right services. Not only the kind of shifts, the population shifts, we're also being a big change in terms of shifts of an ethnicity. So we see shifts and increasing population of Maori, Pacific and Asian populations. This has a big impact, not only for the services, but also if you think about pharmaceuticals. So how do those populations respond to pharmaceuticals? So there's a lot of work that we need to do to start to think about those populations and how actually the health system meets their needs. And as well, that kind of localization in terms of shifts of demographics. Auckland, I think, as everyone knows, we see an annual growth rate of 1.5%. So it's an interesting time for New Zealand. I think we see strong growth, and we also see these demographic shifts. Thinking about the health system as a whole, at the Ministry of Health, we're also thinking quite a lot around the future impact of the workforce. So if you take general trends and general considerations, we know that 65% of today's school children will be employed in jobs that are yet to be created. So we don't actually know what those jobs will be. So we need to think about the impact of workforce as well within the health sector. Ray Kurzweil, so if anyone wants to read Ray Kurzweil, his book, it's really a good read. You should really, I'd encourage you to look up Ray Kurzweil. He was Director of Engineering at Google. His prediction by 2029 is that robots will have reached human levels of intelligence. That's not that far away, you know, and it kind of comes quite quickly. In addition, Gartner, which is a slide that I'll talk about in a moment, Gartner are predicting 33% of jobs will be replaced by software, robots and smart machines. So there's a lot of change predicted to come, and also then we need to consider the impact of technology within the health sector. This is the Gartner hype circle. How many people are familiar with the Gartner model? Has anyone seen this? A few? Okay. Few people. Okay, so I'll talk quite quickly. I love this this hype circle, right? For me, it's fascinating to look at the future trends. The aim of this methodology is to really look at what technology trends are appearing. There's a number of phases. So if you look along the bottom, you have the innovation trigger, you have the peak of inflated expectations, everybody wants to be there, and then you have the trough of disillusionment, no one ever wants to be there. But the slope of enlightenment really talks around when technologies will become scalable, when they become mainstream, and then you get into the plateau of productivity. Now, the reason I like this is because you can start to pick out some of the technologies that we think will come, that we think will have potential, and we monitor this obviously looking at the impact of health. But it's also important to note where they are in that hype circle. So if you look at some of the examples there, so blockchain, we hear a lot about blockchain's coming, it's going to change the world. It's actually heading at that top of peak of inflated expectations, and we know it's going to drop, and there's going to be a period of time where people try to figure this technology out. The one that's really interesting for me, that's really moved forward in the last couple of years, virtual reality, augmented reality, that's actually moving forward really fast. And we have some examples from Google that we're going to show you shortly. But really you can see, if you start to look at this technology cycle, you start to be able to think about which technologies are coming and how to position and what's the timeline that we need to get ready for them. So really the future, my message is we need to stay ahead. We know that there's a lot to change. We know that there's always a number of things to fix within the health system. But really my message is we need to start to think about the future state, and we need to think about how we're staying ahead. So we're seeing quite fast movers coming into health. So we have Babylon Health, which is a virtual service that provides physician services. We're seeing them making quite strong moves, particularly within the UK. We're also seeing examples such as ThoughtWired. That's actually a New Zealand company, and it's a fantastic, really interesting niche company which is looking at the neural networks. So for patients who have disability, that they can actually remotely control the example that we have seen, which is around a car, but the ability to enable people to actually control objects through thought control is actually phenomenal, and that's moving really fast. Really, the main message is we always need to consider health, but we also need to observe that digital players are coming to health, and they have a very different style. They're very fast, they're agile, they move quickly, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to be able to think about how we use those technologies. So this is the example from Google. If we can play the video.
Soon, with the smarts of Google Lens, your assistant will be able to have a conversation about what you see. I just tap the Google Lens icon, point the camera, and my assistant can instantly translate them into English. And now I continue the conversation.
What does it look like?
These pictures should match.
All right, it looks pretty yummy. Second, the assistant is becoming a more connected experience. And today, I'm excited to announce that the Google Assistant is now available on the iPhone. We think the Assistant should be available on all kinds of devices where people might want to ask for help.
Starting today, actions on Google will be supporting transactions. It's a complete end-to-end solution for developers, including payments, identity, notifications, receipts, even account creation. The platform handles all the complexity.
Hi, how can I help?
I'd like delivery from Panera.
Hi, this is Panera. I'll need your delivery address. Which one can I get from Google?
We'll go with 1600 Amphitheater.
What can I get you started with?
I'll have the strawberry poppy seed salad with steak instead of chicken.
Great. Are you ready to check out?
Yep.
Okay. The total is $18.40. Are you ready to place the order?
Yes. I'll just scan my fingerprint to pay with Google, and that's it.
Okay, now the reason I think that's important, that was last week, that was Google's keynote, is that we're starting to see multiple technologies come together. So you have artificial intelligence, you're seeing augmented reality, and it's moving really fast. So for me, it's now, how do we consider what the impact of those technologies will be in health? So we know that change is coming. Really at the ministry, where we're heading is we know we have the health strategy, we're looking at the new technology landscape. At the ministry itself, within my group, we're undergoing a transformation. The reason that we're doing that is because we know there are areas that we need to consider if we think about the future state. So we're looking at the capabilities, we're looking at how we can change rapidly, so we need to be able to accommodate rapid change. We also need to think about the service that we provide. That might change in the future. If we think about what technologies are coming, we may need to change our services. We also need the right culture. It's really important, because the culture will be everything in the new world and the new environment. We need people who understand that change is coming and be able to cope with that change. And also the investment. We need to think about our investment models, but also importantly, we need to think about how healthcare could be delivered differently and how those models of care and revenue models could change. So it's really just to give a heads up that, at the ministry, we're starting to think really about the future, and we're starting to prepare for that by looking at some of the team changes that we may need to cope with the future. And just building on that, in terms of where we're building our capabilities, so what do we think future leaders need to understand in this world? They need to understand the entire system. It's great to hear about disruption, but we want that to be positive. So we need people who understand the whole health system. They need to have the strategic conversations, but also be agile in thinking and actions. It's great if we see a new idea. If we talk about it for a year and a half, the technology's probably moved on and there's something else coming. So you need to be able to manage that chaos and complexity. But at the same time, we've still got a big day job, and we need to keep the stability there. Also, that means in the team, we also need to see a profile that really looks at courage and resilience. It's difficult when you take change on. It's difficult when you look at the new innovation. You need to really think about it, and that can take courage. You need to think, actually, is this going to work? There's an element of risk. But you will also need to be good communicators and storytellers, and also to look at really how we inspire and influence. Obviously, the construct of the ministry and how we work with DHBs, PHOs, we're not there to control, but we're there to inspire, influence, and lead, which means that ultimately we have to be team players. And I was really pleased to hear about from the previous speaker, we need people who, it's about the team culture, particularly within New Zealand. We're a small country, and it's all about the people. A quick plug for innovation and also what's going on at the ministry in terms of innovation. Clinicians Challenge is an event that is open until mid-June, 16th of June. So take a look if there are people out there with great ideas. We want to hear about them. So there's information on the Ministry of Health website. I won't show the video of the Digital Advisory Board because I think we'll run out of time and Darren won't talk to his slot. But really, the Digital Advisory Board was set up to help guide our thinking at the ministry. It's headed up, so I sit on the Digital Advisory Board, Darren. There's also Murray Milner, Mike Wilston, and Marcel van den Assen. And the role of the Digital Advisory Board is to really guide our thinking at the ministry of how we want to construct the future.